It's hard to tell if it's going to rain or it's not, but it's getting pretty hot outside. And the sun comes out, the sun goes away. What am I doing here? I'm cutting this long grass, and then I'm bringing it over here into the asphalt to dry out. And I'm going to show you a little bit of that. But in some ways, I'm punishing myself because I waited too long to cut it. It's up too tall, so it's going to be 2 visits with the scythe and the commas. But grass as a resource is a powerful resource because I'm going to show you the volume of grass that we can get out of here. And because I think it's going to rain today, I'm going to go ahead and get up as much as I can. And you might think, hey, you know, you're in a long pants, long sleeves with a head covering. You might be hot. Actually, when you sweat and then there's a breeze, there's actually some cooling going on because this is all cotton. But I am hot. So anyway, I'm going to run out here pretty quick and get a couple more loads of this to show you how it works, and then I'm going to show you what's on the ground around us as we're drying this hay out to use for grass establishment. By the way, I'm Justin Hitt from Prosperity Homestead. This grass is being used to establish grass in another area, but otherwise it would have been used for a grass-fed garden. As you may know, that this area I'm wrapping things up, selling it here, moving to another piece of property, 25 acres, and then I'm going to be working with some other farms. But this grass here is an extremely valuable resource. Grass provides biomass. Because definitely it's carbon capture and sink. It also sinks moisture, helps reestablish areas. Ideally, this would be reestablished for trees because the slopes, they need to have trees on them. Or you can keep going grass. But again, I'm hand cutting the grass and using it elsewhere rather than using it here. If I was using it here, it'd be so much easier because I would just take this off and put it on the garden and layer in and mat that grass to reduce weeds, to improve my soil health, and then to otherwise create a biomass material. Because when it dries, it looks really nice. It's like this, it's nice and light. But again, I basically cut it, haul it, dry it, put it in the truck, take it to another property, spread it out where I'm establishing grass. Anyway, let me get into that. I'm going to shut my mouth and I'm going to pull some more grass over here and show you how it works. Got a 3-prong a pick. So, as you can see, I carry quite a bit at a time. And I'm going to pick this up here and show you what I got going on. So, this grass is being put out on the ground. Here's grass from last week, I guess, earlier this week. It's already dried out. And this grass behind me is what I've been taking out of the field. It's actually not a lot of space, but remember what we talked about in other videos. So for every square foot of grass, every foot of grass gives you a cubic foot. Another foot of grass gives you 2 cubic foot, about a 50% density, 25% density, depending on the grass. The older the grass gets, the less density it takes up in volume, but that height gives you a thicker stalk and stem. If you're going to feed animals, you don't want that stalk and stem. And I would argue if you're going to use it as bedding or grass or something, you probably don't want that stalk. This is what I'm talking about with stalk. But if you were going to weave baskets or do some other bushcraft with it, these stalks are very useful. They're pretty thick. If you were going to chop it up and make silage, so you're going to chop all this up with a blade or something and then ferment it to make silage, maybe you do that. But the grass is better if you're cutting it when you got a lot of this. Okay, so you want to get it before it goes to seed. Of course here, I took too long because we've either had rain or it's been too damn hot. And so the grass is super long like this. This is hard to cut because it's woody. And animals are not going to eat it. It's too hard. So All it's going to do is dry out and then make good ground cover while we're establishing grass in another area. Now the key of what we're doing here, I'm not that excited. I don't sound that excited because I'm hot, but I want to make sure you understand these things because they're important. And even laying this grass out on concrete out here on the driveway. Now you can lay it out in the middle of a field, but my field is not level. My field is sloped, so I just take it off that field because if it rains, the grass can rot that you've cut. But again, I'm laying it out here in the asphalt, drying it out really good, and then I'll load it up in the truck, take it someplace, and just spread it on the ground. All this grass seed that's on here will reestablish in the new location. But the new location, it's really important to cut the grass about knee-high or hip-high, okay? And I don't know why I'm showing you. I got to step back to show you that. But hip-high because we want usable grass. We want to feed that grass to animals as fodder, as calories to them. We want to use that grass in bedding. We want to use that grass as cover for our gardens in a deep mulch bedding, or we want to turn it into compost. Now, the best way to turn grass into compost or a highly nutritious resource for your garden is to run it through ruminant animals. So run it through cows, run it through goats, run it through animals, sheep. If you're going to run it through sheep, you might as well just let them eat the grass from where it grows. There's no sense cutting it unless you're reestablishing an area. Goats might be the same way if you've got wooded areas, like up on the top of that hill, there's woods, a couple trees and stuff. If they were foraging in those trees and you had shrubs and stuff in there, you might let the goats get in and eat the grass. But the goats are not going to eat grass all the way to the ground. And then on a sloped environment, they might cause more harm than good on the slope. So there will be some areas that you'll cut it. You can use a scythe to cut. You can use a hand comma to cut. I had to cut some of this with a comma because it was too thick. And then you've got to get it up off the field. Now, when I left some of this grass on the field for too long on the surface, it actually killed off the other grass. So we want on the ground a grass density of 50% or better. So that might mean cutting the grass and then mowing it 6 inches and then raking out all the thatch and then reseeding to get grass established. Now you're going to seed appropriately for the time of the year. It could mean letting the grass grow to about hip high or chest high and then scything it all out, taking that long grass before it goes to seed. I keep making the mistake of waiting until things go to seed. You don't want to wait to go to seed. If the plant has seed, the plant used a lot of its nutrients in order to produce that seed. You want to get it while it's storing up the nutrients. So there's this storage of nutrients, and when it's at its peak, that's when the enzymes change and the seed production starts. So you want to cut it before it gets to peak, and then the grass has the maximum nutrient in it. Dehydrating it by drying it makes it available for animals. Then you can store it and have it available in the winter. That little bit of space back there will fill my truck up to the top. It's like four hay bales of materials, except it comes loose. It comes loose like this. And so you got to have a place to store it. And if you store it someplace and you pack it all down and it has the wrong more than 12% moisture, you have a risk of it catching on fire because it'll start composting and get up to about 150, 160 degrees, and then all that dry material is just overheats and catches on fire. If there's a rock in there, the rock could absorb the heat and get too hot. The last point I want to make before we wrap it up, and I finish getting this stuff off the field here, is that you've got your square footage of area growing. You've got volume because of the height. The healthier that grass can be, so if that square foot on the ground has a higher than 50% density of grass roots, okay, so you got really good grass, maybe you got a blend of 2 or 3 different grasses in there, and it's nice and healthy, and you've been cutting it nice and clean, and baling it up or raking it off so it doesn't cause those patches and stuff, then every foot of grass has that much more volume in it, okay? That volume of grass, if the surface volume is dense, the taller the grass gets, the more likely the bottom will rot out or it will hold moisture, fall over, and start creating thatch. So if you have a high density of grass, you want to cut it more often and then rake it off. So if you've got a pasture, for example, that you're cutting hay, if it's spotty, you want to rake it out. You want to get those spots taken care of. You want to add nutrients to it. You want to add lime. Make sure the soil biology is right by adding enzymes and things like that. But then monitor that grass, because whether you cut it when it's your knee high or your waist high or your chest high depends on the density of grass. So some of this grass is still under 50% density. And so I can let it get chest high as long as I cut it before it goes to seed, and it cuts nice and smooth. I'm using a scythe. I don't have to get out there with any power tools. I can put my music on. I can just relax and get the work done. I can get it done earlier in the morning because that moisture holds. But if that density gets higher, I can't let it get chest high. Okay, because as it gets chest high, it starts producing stalks. It chokes out some of the smaller grass. And then what you've got is more height, but not more volume in materials. And so I've found the passion in this. I like to manage grass that way. I don't want to manage my lawn. I don't want a lawn. I want calories. I want pasture. I want this hay that has 4 or 5 different uses to it. So when you're looking at growing, first off, a level space is so much easier than this right here. This is just what I happen to have. But a level space is much easier to use. You want your ground density. You want your soil nutrients. You want enzymes in the soil, the good soil biology converting, helping the plant convert atmospheric nitrogen and store it in the soil. That's your clovers that are in here. And then your grasses themselves, taking carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and turning it into root mass, turning it into plant mass. But the management is important, because if you cut it too soon, like a lot of lawns do, then there's a lot of inputs necessary. If you cut it too late, like I've done here, then you've got the seed and you've got the roots seizing up a little bit. You've got the lower, shorter grasses. There are some grasses that only grow about this tall. Those are shaded out and creates patches of thatch in the ground, and it's just not optimal. So I'm going to make a habit of cutting more consistently. And since I'm cutting by hand, I've got to allow myself more time to cut. If you're cutting with a machine, and in fact, if this was a level field, I'd have a sickle bar mower. I'm even thinking about getting a hand sickle bar mower, but I use a scythe most of the time, and it's just fine. But again, these are points that we need to consider. The density of the grass on the ground, the height of the grass, the volume density, the type of grasses or grass. I would prefer multiple types of grasses. And then finally, what are you going to do with the grass? And we talked about some of the uses of grass, but again, can you store that good quality hay to feed animals and turn the grass into proteins? Can you use some of the hay in silage, or can you use it chopped up for mulch? Can you use it as it is for a deep mulch system around fruit trees in your garden to turn the grass again into food calories? There are millions of acres of grass in people's lawn today. If it was properly managed, it could be a valuable resource to feed people, to create nutrients, to capture carbon from the atmosphere, to build networks of healthy soil underground. I hope I'm doing my part, and I'm educating myself, and I hope you will too. If you have any questions about what I'm covering here, go to the comments below. Ask your questions about grass. This is a demonstration. This isn't meant to be messy. It's just how it is. And ideally, you need to establish the grass before you can establish the trees. So whatever system this is, I hope it's been educational. I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead, and I'm going to get back to work because it didn't get cooler out here. But even though, when I feel that breeze, it just cools me off quite a bit. It's like it can get kind of chilly under here, but it's still, I don't want to get sunburned. Anyway, visit www.prosperityhomestead.org with your questions. Thanks for being a part of what we do here. If you're not already a member, by the way, membership is how you support this channel, but membership is also how you get access to additional resources, group coaching calls, webinars, and other programs to help you get your small farm or homestead started immediately. There are things you can start doing right now where you live, and there are planning steps that we can take to help you get your small farm homestead estate. 5 acres or more will satisfy most people, and it is entirely possible even in this economy. Visit www.prosperityhomestead.org to ask your questions. Thanks for watching.